Once upon a time, in a kingdom so foggy and forgotten that even the maps gave up trying to find it, there lived a queen whose name was whispered only by moths and misfiled scrolls. Her crown was slightly crooked, her throne mildly uncomfortable, and her legacy, well, it was buried under centuries of dust, misplaced footnotes, and one very lazy historian named Edgar. Her name, Queen Brunhild of the Foglands, or was it Fredegund of the slightly damp marshes? No one's quite sure. But tonight, as you drift into slumber, we shall unravel the yawnsome tale of her reign. A reign filled with tepid battles, lukewarm alliances, and a royal goose named Harold. And before your eyelids surrender to gravity, don't forget to gently snore on that like button, sleepily subscribe to the Dream Channel, and let me know in the comments from which cozy corner of the world are you watching this bedtime boredom unfold, preferably typed with one eye half closed and a blanket over your head in the year 587-ish, give or take a nap, in a kingdom so obscure that even the clouds forgot its name. A baby was born beneath a tapestry depicting 3 confused sheep and a turnip. The castle, known as Fogshire Keep, was built entirely from slightly damp limestone and smelled faintly of historical mildew. The baby's cry was not loud nor dramatic. It was more of a polite squeak, like a mouse asking for directions. The midwife, who had once delivered a loaf of bread by accident, declared, "She's got the lungs of a librarian." And so, the child was wrapped in a blanket made from recycled royal proclamations and handed to her parents, Duke Blunderhelm the Forgetful and Lady Mildred of the Mushrooms. They named her Brunhild, or possibly Fredegund. The naming scroll was smudged by a rogue teardrop from a sentimental goose. From the very beginning, Brunhild showed signs of mild greatness. She could stare at a candle for 3 hours without blinking. She once cooed in perfect iambic pentameter. She had a birthmark shaped like a slightly disappointed crown. Her crib was carved from ancient oak and gently haunted by the ghost of a bored scribe. Her lullabies were sung by a bard named Elric, who only knew one tune, Ode to a Slightly Overcooked Turnip. It was a hit in the marshlands. As she grew, Brunhild developed a fondness for pigeons with strong opinions, scrolls that smelled like old soup, sitting quietly and contemplating moss. Her first word was meh, her second was bureaucracy, her third was goose. The royal astrologer, who had once predicted the rise of a sentient cabbage, declared, "This child shall rule with the power of mild confusion and the grace of a sleepy squirrel." Everyone nodded, unsure what that meant, but it sounded majestic enough. And so, the baby queen-to-be was tucked into her cradle, surrounded by the gentle snores of history, the soft rustle of parchment, and the distant honk of destiny. The kingdom where Queen Brunhild, or Fredegund, depending on which scroll you trust, was born was known as Fogshire, though some called it the slightly moist realm, and one cartographer simply labeled it Here Be Mushrooms. It was nestled between 2 rivers that frequently forgot which direction they were flowing, and bordered by a forest that politely declined to be mapped. Fogshire was a place of gentle confusion. The sun rose at 11 a.m. sharp, unless it was feeling shy. The royal rooster crowed only on Thursdays, and only if someone asked nicely. The official anthem was a lullaby hummed by sheep, accompanied by the sound of distant yawning. The kingdom's capital, Snorington, was famous for its library of unread scrolls, its annual festival of forgetfulness, and its population of citizens who could nap standing up. The streets were paved with cobblestones that occasionally rearranged themselves for variety, and the royal palace had a hallway that led nowhere, but was still considered a tourist attraction. Maps of Fogshire were notoriously unreliable. One famous mapmaker, Sir Carto von Blur, once spent 7 years charting the kingdom, only to discover he'd been drawing his own garden. His map included a lake that didn't exist, a mountain that was actually a large pile of laundry, a border marked, "Here lies Kevin," though no one knew who Kevin was. The royal archives contained exactly one accurate map, but it was used as a placemat during the great soup banquet of 612, and now smelled faintly of leek. Despite its geographical uncertainty, Fogshire was a peaceful place. The people were content, the geese were mildly obedient, and the nobles spent most of their time debating whether moss was a vegetable. The economy was based on goose feathers, decorative scrolls, the occasional export of mildly enchanted turnips. Queen Brunhild grew up surrounded by this sleepy splendor. Her days were filled with lessons in royal etiquette, how to wave slowly, diplomacy, how to nod thoughtfully, and advanced napping techniques. Her tutor, Professor Yonsworth, once taught an entire semester while asleep. As she wandered the misty halls of Fogshire Palace, Brunhild often wondered, what lies beyond the fog? But every time she asked, someone handed her a cup of warm broth and suggested a nap. And so, the kingdom remained shrouded in mystery, wrapped in fog and gently forgotten by time, just the way its people liked it. By the time Queen Brunhild reached the age of marriageable-ish, the kingdom of Fogshire had received exactly 3 proposals from neighboring realms. One was from a prince who thought Fogshire was a bakery. One was from a duke who accidentally mailed his proposal to a turnip. And one was from King Sigebert of Austrasia, a man known for his impressive spoon collection and his ability to fall asleep mid-toast. King Sigebert was a gentle soul, with a beard shaped like a question mark, and a voice that sounded like someone whispering through a pillow. He ruled a kingdom that specialized in exporting lukewarm cider and mildly enchanted socks. His royal advisors described him as pleasantly beige. The proposal arrived in the form of a scroll tied to the leg of a goose named Harold, who had flown the entire journey while humming the Fogshire anthem. Harold landed in the palace courtyard, honked once, and promptly demanded a snack. The scroll read, "Dearest Brunhild," or Fredegund, depending on the archivist, "I offer thee my hand, my heart, and my collection of ceremonial spoons. May our union be as peaceful as a nap beneath a cabbage tree. Yours in mild affection, King Sigebert the Snoozy." Brunhild was intrigued, not by the romance, but by the mention of spoons. She had long admired the diplomatic potential of cutlery. Her favorite spoon was named Gerald. A royal council was convened to discuss the proposal. It consisted of Lady Yonabel, Minister of Blankets, Sir Snorelot, Knight of the Pillow Fort, the Royal Goose Whisperer, Harold's agent. After 3 hours of gentle debate and one accidental nap, the council agreed. The proposal was adequately romantic. Brunhild accepted on the condition that Harold be knighted and given his own pond. The wedding was scheduled for the following month, during the festival of slightly wilted flowers. Invitations were sent via sleepy pigeons, and the royal florist was instructed to make everything look dreamily indifferent. As the day approached, Brunhild practiced her royal wave. a slow, circular motion resembling someone stirring soup, and rehearsed her vows, which included the phrase, "I promise to tolerate thee in all weather." Meanwhile, Harold the Goose began writing his memoirs, titled Wings of Diplomacy, My Life in Feathers. And so, the stage was set for a union that would shape the future of Fogshire, not with passion or power, but with spoons, snores, and the soft honk of destiny. The day of Queen Brunhild's wedding to King Sigebert dawned with a gentle fog and the sound of distant yawns echoing through the valley. The royal pigeons delivered the final invitations, some of which accidentally went to a family of hedgehogs, and one to a particularly elegant turnip named Lord Rootsworth. The palace was decorated in the traditional Fogshire style, banners made of recycled scrolls, bouquets of slightly wilted cabbage, a ceremonial carpet woven entirely from goose feathers. Harold was not consulted. Guests began arriving from neighboring realms, each more confused than the last. The Duke of Transylvania brought a gift of lukewarm cider and a spoon engraved with the word, "Oops." Lady Snoozette of the Marshlands wore a gown made of moss and accidentally sat on the cake. Sir Napolo mistook the throne for a footstool and spent most of the ceremony snoring gently. The ceremony was held in the Hall of Mild Celebrations, a room famous for its echo that only repeated things said in a whisper. The royal bard played a tune called Ode to Matrimonial May on a harp made of old fence posts. Brunhild wore a gown stitched from ancient curtains and embroidered with symbols of peace, sleep, and moderately priced cheese. Her veil was so long it was last seen heading toward the pantry. King Sigebert arrived fashionably late, having fallen asleep in the carriage and woken up only when Harold honked directly into his ear. The vows were exchanged in the traditional Fogshire style: a slow nod, a shared spoon, a ceremonial nap. Brunhild declared, "I promise to tolerate thee in all seasons, even the damp ones." Sigebert replied, "I vow to share my spoons, my socks, and my silence." The royal goose, Harold, stood proudly beside them, wearing a tiny crown and holding the rings in his beak. When asked if he approved of the union, he honked once and waddled off to nibble on the ceremonial breadcrumbs. After the ceremony, the guests enjoyed a feast of sleepy stew, mostly broth, dreamy dumplings filled with mashed scrolls, Fogshire cake, which tasted like historical uncertainty. The celebration lasted until precisely 7 p.m., when everyone politely excused themselves for their scheduled naps. The newlyweds retired to the royal chamber of yawning, where they were serenaded by a choir of sheep humming lullabies in Latin. And thus, the wedding of Queen Brunhild and King Sigebert was complete, not with fireworks or fanfare, but with soft sighs, gentle confusion, and the quiet rustle of history turning a very sleepy page. While Queen Brunhild and King Sigebert were busy organizing nap zones and spoon ceremonies, storm was quietly curdling in the neighboring kingdom of Neustria. There, a formidable woman named Fredegund was rising to power, not through naps and goose treaties, but through sharp strategy, sharper cheese, and even sharper elbows. Fredegund was known for her ability to glare at a candle until it melted, her fondness for weaponized dairy, her pet assassin, Kevin, who disguised himself as a traveling cheese merchant. Unlike Fogshire, Neustria was a land of action. Their scrolls were short, their battles brisk, and their cheese aged aggressively. Fredegund declared herself queen after a brief debate with the previous monarch, which ended when she threw a wheel of Gouda at his throne. Her first royal decree was bold. Let there be cheese. Let it be strong. Let it be mildly threatening. This declaration alarmed Fogshire's diplomats, who were used to declarations like, let there be moss appreciation, and let naps be long and unregulated. Brunhild, ever the peaceful ruler, sent a delegation to Neustria, carrying a basket of sleepy muffins, a scroll titled, Let's All Just Calm Down. Harold the Goose, wearing a diplomatic bow tie, Fredegund responded by launching the Cheese War. It began with a surprise attack, a barrage of brie launched from trebuchets, followed by a cavalry charge riding goats. Fogshire's defenses, consisting mostly of polite guards and decorative hedges, were unprepared. The Royal Rock Registry was briefly converted into a cheese inventory, and Sir Snorelot was found buried under a pile of camembert. Brunhild, ever resourceful, countered with the scroll shield strategy. Her soldiers held up long, bureaucratic documents to confuse and bore the enemy. Fredegund's forces, however, were trained to skim aggressively. The war dragged on for weeks, with battles such as the skirmish of Stilton Hill, the siege of the slightly crumbly fortress, the Great Fondue Fumble, where both sides accidentally dipped their weapons in cheese. Eventually, the conflict reached a stalemate. Fredegund sent a message via Kevin the Assassin Cheesemonger. Let us end this war. I am out of cheddar. You are out of spoons. Let us meet. Brunhild agreed, and the two queens met at the neutral napping pavilion, where they shared a platter of compromised cheese and agreed to a truce. Harold the Goose officiated the treaty signing, honking twice to seal the deal. Thus ended the cheese war, not with victory, but with lactose-induced fatigue and mutual respect for dairy-based diplomacy. After the scroll skirmishes and the side diplomacy settled into a gentle lull, Queen Brunhild turned her attention to something truly vital: national restfulness. She believed that a well-napped kingdom was a peaceful kingdom, and so she issued Decree 42B, also known as the Royal Nap Zone Act, which stated, let every citizen, noble or goose, have access to a designated nap space. Let silence reign during nap hours. Let no one disturb a sleeper, lest they be fined 1 feather and a stern bedtime story. Fogshire transformed overnight. Nap zones popped up like mushrooms after a drizzle. Velvet-lined benches under whispering trees. Hammocks strung between statues of yawning philosophers. Quiet tents filled with soft pillows and the scent of warm broth. The Nap Enforcement Guild was formed, led by Sir Snorelot and Lady Yonabel. Their duties included ensuring nap zones were properly fluffed, gently escorting loud talkers to the reflection corner, issuing sleep citations to anyone caught skipping their scheduled snooze. Even Harold the Goose had a custom nap nook, a feather-lined hammock beside the royal pond, complete with a tiny curtain and a sign that read, "Do not honk before noon." The kingdom's productivity dropped slightly, but happiness soared. Arguments were settled with naps. Meetings ended with lullabies. One noble even proposed legislation entirely in his sleep, which passed unanimously because no one wanted to wake him. Foreign diplomats visiting Fogshire were baffled. The ambassador from Neustria once asked, "Is this a war strategy or a spa?" Brunhild replied, "Yes." And so, Fogshire became the most rested realm in medieval Europe. Its citizens walked slower, smiled more, and occasionally forgot what they were doing. But they did so with serenity and a pillow under one arm. It started with a honk, not a polite honk, not a ceremonial honk, a declaration honk, issued by Harold the Goose, Fogshire's most decorated diplomat, snack enthusiast, and occasional scroll courier. Harold had grown weary of palace life. He was expected to wear miniature crowns, attend nap councils, and deliver scrolls with perfect posture. But what Harold truly wanted was autonomy, breadcrumbs, and a pond with better lighting. One morning, he waddled into the throne room, wearing a sash that read, "Feathers First," stood atop the royal pudding cart, and honked, "Honk! I demand goose rights, snack sovereignty, and a velvet hammock." Queen Brunhild blinked slowly. King Sigebert, mid-nap, murmured something about soup. Lady Yonabel whispered, "I think the goose is staging a coup." Thus began the Goose Rebellion. Harold rallied support from other palace creatures, the squirrels of the East Wing, who wanted more acorns and fewer poetry readings, the royal cats, who demanded warmer cushions and less harp music, one very opinionated duck named Reginald, who insisted on being called "Your Quackness Together." They formed the Feathered Coalition, issuing a list of demands: unlimited breadcrumbs, goose representation in the Royal Scroll Committee, a monthly nap parade with feathered floats, the right to honk during official ceremonies. Brunhild, ever the diplomat, did not respond with force. Instead, she summoned the Council of Crumbs, a mix of nobles, nap marshals, and one confused baker. After a lengthy discussion and a brief intermission for napping, they agreed to negotiate. The treaty talks were held in the pillow chamber, where Harold sat on a velvet cushion and sipped lukewarm tea. Brunhild opened with a speech titled, "Let Us Honk in Harmony," which was met with polite applause and one enthusiastic quack. After 3 days of gentle debate, the Treaty of Breadcrumbs was signed. Its terms included a goose-only pond with lily pads and mood lighting, a ceremonial honk allowed at the start of every royal decree, Goose Appreciation Day, featuring interpretive waddling and snack buffets. Harold's official title, upgraded to Lord Ambassador of Feathers and Snacks. The rebellion ended not with feathers flying, but with feathers fluffed. Harold returned to his duties with pride, occasionally reminding everyone that he was now technically royalty. And so, Fogshire became the first kingdom in Europe to recognize goose sovereignty. Historians later described it as the most polite uprising in medieval history, and school children reenacted it using sock puppets and stale toast. And the annals of Fogshire, among scrolls about moss regulations and goose diplomacy, there lies a ballad, softly sung and often snored through, about a knight named Sir Snorelot. He was not swift. He was not fierce. He once mistook a helmet for a soup bowl. But he was loyal, gentle, and possessed a rare gift, the ability to fall asleep anywhere, anytime, and with such grace that even enemies paused to admire his form. Sir Snorelot's armor was lined with velvet. His sword was mostly decorative. His shield bore the royal emblem, a pillow crossed with a spoon. He rode a horse named Dozer, who trotted at a pace best described as leisurely uncertain. His most famous exploits include the nap at Naptown, where he slept through an entire siege and woke up just in time to accept the surrender, the pillow duel, in which he defeated a rival knight by gently tossing a cushion and then yawning dramatically, the Dream Treaty, negotiated entirely in his sleep. resulting in a 10-year peace and a national blanket holiday. Queen Brunhild adored him. She appointed him Knight of the Royal Rest, tasked with defending Fogshire's nap zones and ensuring all citizens had access to proper snoozing conditions. His motto, "Let thy eyelids fall before thy sword." Bards sang his ballad in lullaby form. "O Snore-a-lot, brave and bold, with dreams more precious than royal gold. He fought with naps, he won with sighs, and tucked the kingdom 'neath sleepy skies." Sir Snore-a-lot eventually retired to a cottage shaped like a pillow, where he taught young squires the art of strategic napping and hosted the annual Yawn-Off tournament. His legacy, a kingdom that knew the power of rest, the strength of serenity, and the quiet heroism of a well-timed nap. Once a year, Queen Brunhild summoned her wisest advisors, sleepiest nobles, and most opinionated animals to the Grand Council of Yawns, a gathering dedicated to solving Fogshire's most pressing issues with minimal urgency. This year's agenda was unusually spicy. Should soup be considered a beverage, a meal, or a lifestyle? The debate began promptly at 10 a.m. After everyone had their morning nap, the council chamber was filled with cushioned chairs, a harp playing lullabies in the corner, a snack table featuring 6 types of lukewarm broth. Lady Yonabel opened the discussion with a scroll titled "Soup, a Spoonful of Identity." She argued that soup was a meal, citing its ability to contain vegetables, history, and existential comfort. Sir Snore-a-lot countered with a yawn and a chart showing that soup, when served in a mug, clearly behaved like a beverage. He then fell asleep mid-sentence. The royal baker proposed a compromise. Let soup be whatever it wants to be. We are but humble slurpers in the grand pot of life. Harold the goose, serving as official minute-taker, scribbled notes with a quill in his beak. His minutes included, "Lady Yonabel said something poetic about carrots." Sir Snore-a-lot snored in agreement. Someone spilled broth on the treaty scroll. The debate lasted 3 hours, punctuated by snack breaks, nap intermissions, and one interpretive dance about lentils. Eventually, Queen Brunhild stood and declared, "Let soup be free. Let it nourish, hydrate, and confuse us. This council is adjourned. Nap time resumes." The motion passed unanimously, mostly because half the council was already asleep. And so, Fogshire embraced soup in all its forms. It became the official food of diplomacy, the preferred beverage of bedtime, and the centerpiece of every royal banquet. A statue was erected in the town square, a spoon, a bowl, and a goose, all carved from mildly enchanted turnips. Every autumn, when the fog grew thick and the geese wore scarves, Queen Brunhild hosted Fogshire's most beloved event, the Festival of Forgotten Things. It was a celebration of everything the kingdom had misplaced, misfiled, or simply let drift into the mist of memory. The festival grounds were decorated with lanterns shaped like question marks, banners stitched from lost laundry, a central fountain that burbled gently and occasionally dispensed soup. Citizens brought offerings to the altar of absent-mindedness, socks without partners, scrolls with no known author, keys to doors that no longer existed. One mysterious object labeled possibly a hat or a turnip. Lady Yonabel opened the festivities with a speech titled, "We may not remember, but we still care," followed by a moment of silence for all the names forgotten during last year's nap parade. Sir Snore-a-lot led the procession of misplaced nobility, where nobles walked in slow circles, wearing robes embroidered with things they'd once lost, titles, spoons, and in one case, a cousin. Harold the Goose served as Grand Marshal, honking gently as he guided the crowd through the maze of misfiled memories. A labyrinth made entirely of old scrolls and soft cushions. At the center was the Pavilion of Puzzlement, where people could sit quietly and try to remember what they came for. The highlight of the festival was the Fogshire Forget-Off, a friendly competition where villagers tried to recall obscure facts. What year did we ban aggressive yawning? Who invented the moss-based calendar? Was the royal soup banquet real or just a dream? No one ever won. That was the point. At sunset, Queen Brunhild stood atop the Tower of Mild Reflection and released a scroll into the fog. It read, "To all that we've lost, misplaced, or never quite understood, may you rest gently in the mist. And if you return, we'll greet you with soup." The crowd sighed contentedly. Some cried, most napped. And so, the Festival of Forgotten Things ended as it always did, with soft music, warm broth, and the comforting knowledge that even the forgotten are fondly remembered in Fogshire. In Fogshire, where moss was respected and naps were sacred, Queen Brunhild introduced one of her most curious reforms, the Royal Rock Registry. The idea was simple. Every citizen must choose a favorite rock, name it, and register it with the crown. The goal? To promote geological appreciation and reduce pebble-related disputes in public spaces. At first, the people embraced it. Lady Yonabel registered a smooth river stone, named Sir Pebbleton. Sir Snore-a-Lot chose a flat gray slab he used as a pillow, dubbed Nuprock. Harold the Goose submitted a shiny pebble called Honkolite, though he tried to eat it twice. The registry grew quickly. Scrolls filled with rock names poured into the palace. The royal archivist began categorizing them by shape, mood, and snack resemblance. But then came the boulder incident. A farmer named Elric submitted a massive boulder named Greg. Greg was too large to fit in the registry room. He blocked a nap zone. He refused to be moved. When asked for his geological classification, Elric simply said, "He's just Greg." The Royal Rock Committee was baffled. Was Greg a rock, a landmark, or a citizen? Could he vote? Was he eligible for goose cuddles? Debates erupted. The Pebble Party argued Greg was too large to be relatable. The Sedimentary Society insisted Greg had layers of emotional depth. The moss enthusiasts just wanted to decorate him. Queen Brunhild called an emergency session of the Council of Stones, where she proposed a compromise. Let Greg be Greg. Let rocks be rocks. Let us not quarrel over quartz. The motion passed with a gentle thud. Greg was officially declared a free boulder of Fogshire, exempt from registry rules, and given his own nap zone. Children visited him to tell sleepy stories. Harold the Goose laid an egg beside him once, which was later declared symbolic. And so, the Royal Rock Registry continued, now with a clause titled, "The Greg Exception." Citizens kept naming their stones. The scrolls kept piling up, and Fogshire remained the only kingdom in Europe where geology was a matter of gentle pride. It was a foggy Tuesday when the slightly damp bakery, Fogshire's most beloved source of sleepy scones and existentially soft bread, found itself under siege. The attackers, a band of confused nobles from Neustria who had misread a map and believed the bakery was a strategic outpost. Their leader, Baron Crustwald, was convinced the building contained secret scrolls, enchanted yeast, and possibly a portal to the moss dimension. Queen Brunhild, upon hearing of the siege, blinked twice and said, "But that's just where we get our nap muffins." The bakery's defenders included the royal baker, wielding a ladle and a firm belief in gluten diplomacy, 3 apprentice pastry knights, armed with baguettes and sleepy determination, Harold the goose, who had been enjoying a croissant when the siege began. The battle began with a dramatic misunderstanding. Baron Crustwald blew into a baguette, mistaking it for a battle horn. The sound was more toasty wheeze than war cry, but it did startle a nearby squirrel. The defenders responded by launching crumb volleys, tiny, buttery projectiles that caused mild confusion and intense hunger among the attackers. Sir Snorelot arrived late, having napped through the alarm, and immediately began fortifying the scone wall. Negotiations were attempted. Queen Brunhild sent a scroll titled, "Please kindly leave our bread alone," tied to a muffin and delivered via herald. The Neustrians, however, were already deep into a tactical debate about whether croissants were a form of espionage. Eventually, the siege ended when Baron Crustwald accidentally ate the bakery's entire supply of enchanted cinnamon rolls and fell into a 3-day nap. His troops, inspired by his commitment to rest, declared victory and retreated to find tea. The bakery was saved. Fogshire rejoiced with a festival of flaky triumph, featuring interpretive dances about dough and a statue of Harold holding a baguette like a sword. And so, the slightly damp bakery became a symbol of resilience, carbohydrates, and the power of pastry-based diplomacy. Before the scrolls, the treaties, and the ceremonial muffins, Harold was just a goose with a dream. To honk with purpose, he began as a humble messenger, delivering scrolls tied to his leg with ribbon and mild confusion. But Harold had ambition. He honked with flair. He waddled with dignity. He once stared down a squirrel during a diplomatic picnic and won. His rise was swift and feathered. He negotiated peace during the Cheese War by honking rhythmically until everyone forgot what they were arguing about. He led the Goose Rebellion with a velvet sash and a manifesto written in breadcrumbs. He became the first non-human to hold a seat on the Royal Scroll Committee, where he voted exclusively by pecking muffins. Harold's memoir, Wings of Diplomacy, became a bestseller in Fogshire. It included chapters like Feathers and Foreign Policy, The Honk Herd, Round the Bakery, Nap Zones I Have Napped In. He was honored with titles such as Lord Ambassador of Feathers and Snacks, Knight of the Velvet Pond, official mascot of Goose Appreciation Day. Children adored him. Nobles respected him. Even Fredegund once admitted, "That goose has presence." A statue was erected in the palace courtyard. Harold mid-honk, wings outstretched, standing atop a scroll and a muffin. It became the most napped-under monument in the kingdom. And so, Harold's chronicles became part of Fogshire's sleepy legend. Not just a goose, but a symbol of diplomacy, dignity, and the power of a well-timed honk. It was a quiet morning in Fogshire. The fog was particularly poetic. The birds were humming lullabies, and Harold the goose was practicing his signature honk in 3-part harmony. Queen Brunhild, having just finished her 3rd cup of sleepy stew, wandered into the royal garden for what was meant to be a brief stroll. There she encountered Sir Oakley, a towering tree with a noble posture mossy wisdom, and a branch that resembled a monocle. The tree had stood in the garden for over a century, quietly observing royal affairs, nap parades, and one goose rebellion. Brunhild paused, stared at the tree, and declared, "Thou hast stood with dignity, shaded our naps, and listened to our scroll readings. By the power vested in me by mildly enchanted bureaucracy, I dub thee knight." She raised the ceremonial spoon sword, tapped the bark twice, and dropped a leaf into the royal registry. The court was baffled. Lady Yonabel whispered, "Is this symbolic or botanical?" Sir Snorelot nodded solemnly and fell asleep against the trunk. Harold honked once, then bowed. The tree was officially titled Sir Oakley of the Garden Realm, protector of shade, guardian of squirrels, and honorary member of the Nap Enforcement Guild. A plaque was placed at its roots, knighted for services to serenity, leafiness, and quiet contemplation. From that day forward, citizens left offerings of acorns and sleepy poems. Children played beneath Sir Oakley's branches, believing he could grant dreams. The tree was consulted during council meetings by placing scrolls at its base and waiting for a breeze. Historians debated the event for years. Was it a metaphor? A moment of royal whimsy? Or simply a queen recognizing the nobility of nature? Brunhild never clarified. She simply said, "Some knights wear armor, others wear bark." And so, Sir Oakley stood tall, a leafy legend in the sleepy saga of Fogshire, proof that even trees, when patient and poetic enough, might one day be honored with a spoon sword and a nap beneath their own shade. In the 7th year of Queen Brunhild's reign, a troubling trend emerged. Scrolls were getting shorter. Decrees were being issued in under 300 words. Some nobles were even using bullet points. The horror. Brunhild, a firm believer in verbose governance, issued the Scroll Length Act, mandating that all official documents must be at least 400 words long, include one metaphor, preferably about moss, contain a footnote referencing Harold the Goose. The kingdom's scribes rejoiced. The bards, however, saw opportunity. Enter Thistlequill, Fogshire's most dramatic bard, who began composing scrolls in verse. His first submission, on the regulation of nap blankets in public spaces, was 87 stanzas long and included a subplot about a romantic turnip. Soon, bureaucratic bards became a thing. Every law, treaty, and goose permit was written in rhymed couplets or sleepy sonnets. The royal decree on soup classification was performed as a lullaby with harp accompaniment. Notable scrolls included The Goose Who Honked at Midnight, a zoning proposal, Ode to the Slightly Damp Bench, Seating Guidelines for Fogshire, The Ballad of the Misplaced Sock, Laundry Policy. Reform meetings grew longer. Nobles began bringing cushions. Sir Snorelot once fell asleep during a reading and woke up just in time to vote aye on a clause about moss appreciation. Harold the Goose, now a literary icon, began pecking his own verses. His poem, Feathers in Fog, was published on scrolls scented with lavender and distributed during nap parades. Eventually, Brunhild added a clause to the Scroll Length Act. If thou must write, write with flair, but let not thy scroll exceed the patience of a sleepy goose. And so, Fogshire became the only kingdom where bureaucracy rhymed. Footnotes were poetic, and bedtime stories doubled as legal documents. After years of scrolls, goose diplomacy, nap legislation, and mildly confusing wars, Queen Brunhild felt the tug of tranquility. Not the kind found in royal chambers or council meetings, but the deeper kind, nestled in silence, moss, and memory. She announced her retirement with a scroll titled, "Let Me Be Leafy," sealed with a feather and a sprig of lavender. The kingdom sighed in collective understanding. Harold honked softly. Sir Snorelot wept into a pillow. Brunhild relocated to the Abbey of Whispering Ferns, a quiet retreat tucked between two sleepy hills and one very philosophical pond. The abbey was known for its moss gardens, curated by monks who spoke only in haiku, its library of forgotten thoughts and half-finished lullabies, its daily ritual of contemplative napping, performed under sun-dappled vines. There, Brunhild began writing moss poetry, verses inspired by the slow growth of greenery, the softness of shade, and the gentle wisdom of things that never rush. Her most beloved poem was titled Ode to the Moss Beneath My Throne. Thou didst grow where power sat, unseen, unpraised, yet ever flat. I ruled, thou listened. Now I rest, and thou glistens. She spent her days walking barefoot through dew-kissed paths, sipping broth from the wooden bowls, and occasionally sending scrolls to Fogshire with notes like, "Please water Harold's pond," or "Has anyone seen my spoon?" The kingdom flourished in her absence. Nap zones expanded. Scrolls grew more poetic. Harold published his third memoir, Feathers and Ferns, My Life After Honk. Brunhild never returned to rule, but her presence lingered in mossy corners, in sleepy verses, and in the hearts of those who understood that sometimes the greatest legacy is a well-timed retreat. Years after Queen Brunhild retired to the Abbey of Whispering Ferns, Fogshire scribes began compiling the official chronicle of royal things, a massive scroll meant to record every monarch, muffin decree, and goose-related treaty in the kingdom's history. The task fell to Edgar the Absent-Minded, a historian known for filing scrolls alphabetically by mood, mistaking Harold's memoirs for a prophecy, once labeling a cheese wheel as Duke of Derry Edgar, began sorting Brunhild's reign with enthusiasm and a cup of sleepy stew. But somewhere between the Nap Zone Act and the Goose Rebellion, things went awry. He misfiled Brunhild's scrolls under B for bureaucracy, then under F for feathers, and finally under M for miscellaneous queens. Her name was accidentally merged with Fredegund's, resulting in a hybrid entry, Queen Brundegund, known for naps, cheese warfare, and possibly being a goose. The error spread. Scholars debated whether Brunhild was real, symbolic, or a metaphor for moss. One bard wrote a song titled The Queen Who Might Have Been a Feathered Dream. It became a hit in the marshlands. Harold the Goose, upon hearing of the confusion, waddled into the royal archive and honked so loudly that 3 scrolls fell off the shelf. He pecked Edgar's notes, rearranged the parchments, and left a feather as a signature. Eventually, the truth was restored. Mostly, Brunhild's legacy was recompiled, though some entries still listed her as Queen of Mildness and occasional honking. To honor her properly, Fogshire erected a monument, a scroll wrapped around a mossy stone, inscribed with the words, "She ruled with softness, scribbled with grace, and left behind a kingdom of naps and feathers." And so, though nearly lost to footnotes and filing errors, Queen Brunhild's story endured, not in bold headlines, but in bedtime tales, moss poetry, and the gentle rustle of parchment in the fog. In the quiet corners of Fogshire, where moss grows undisturbed and scrolls rustle like lullabies, the story of Queen Brunhild lives on, not in bold proclamations, but in whispers, dreams, and the gentle honk of Harold echoing through the mist. Children still ask, was she real? And the elders reply, real enough to make naps noble. Her name, once misfiled and nearly lost, now floats through bedtime tales. The queen who knighted a tree, who ended wars with scrolls and soup, who ruled not with might, but with mildness. In the Abbey of Whispering Ferns, her moss poetry is read aloud during twilight, each verse a soft reminder that greatness can be quiet, leafy, and slightly confused. Harold, now retired and living beside a pond with mood lighting, honks once each evening at sunset, a tribute to the queen, who believed even geese deserved titles. And so, Brunhild's legacy drifts on the fog, not forgotten, but gently remembered, not carved in stone, but etched in naps, feathers, and the slow turning of parchment. If you've made it this far, you've wandered through 20 chapters of gentle chaos, poetic bureaucracy, and goose-led diplomacy. You've met Sir Snorelot, Lady Yonabel, and Harold the Honkful. You've survived the cheese war, the scroll surge, and the siege of the slightly damp bakery. Now, dear dreamer, it's time to close your eyes. Let the fog of Fogshire wrap around you like a velvet blanket. Let the echoes of sleepy scrolls and mossy verses lull you into slumber. And if you hear a honk in the distance, it's just Harold, wishing you well. Good night, noble napper. Sleep softly, dream slowly, and may your pillows be ever fluffed. Good night.